the Indiana Historical Society Heritage Support Grant Program, made possible by Lilly Endowment Incorporated. My name is Bryce Gorman, and I am the Fundraising Educator in Local History Services at the Indiana Historical Society. My goal is to help organizations build robust fundraising programs so they can be effective at their mission. I'm responsible for the educational curriculum that's an important part of our Heritage Support Grant Program. I offer free workshops, webinars, and consultations to organizations in Indiana. Stewardship, donor stewardship, is a vital part of the fundraising process. The principles and techniques of fundraising define stewardship as the philosophy and means by which an institution exercises ethical accountability in the use of contributed resources, and the philosophy and means by which a donor exercises responsibility in the voluntary use of resources. So I'm highlighting a couple key words here. So stewardship can really be distilled into two words: gratitude, the practice of genuine gratitude thoughtfully expressed to givers, and accountability, the careful and responsible management of something entrusted to the care of others. So please, let's keep gratitude and accountability in mind as we go through this mini webinar. So it's exceedingly helpful to have a plan for your stewardship. Having a written stewardship plan gives you a place to document the procedures for acknowledging gifts. It states what your organization will do once you get a donation, and this plan can improve your donor retention and encourage donors to make larger future donations. Having a stewardship plan ensures that you are being consistent and appropriate with your stewardship. You want to make sure that everyone who makes a $100 gift gets the same level of appreciation from your organization, and someone who's given a $500 gift receives appreciation representative of that gift. Your stewardship plan may say that everyone who gets a gift gets a thank you note, or everyone who gets a gift, gives us a gift over $250, gets a thank you note signed by a board member. And then moving on, everyone who gives us a $500 gift gets a thank you note, and they are listed on our website as a contributor. So the acknowledgement is going to ramp up based on their level of gift. A stewardship plan can also look at different types of donors. A brand new donor to your organization might be offered a behind the scenes tour. Donors who are renewing their gift, they could get special recognition in your newsletter. It might say something like John and Sue Smith, who generously supported us for their 5th consecutive year. Now, your major donors, this would be the top 20% of your donors, would be acknowledged slightly more significantly. And how that they'll be acknowledged is entirely up to you. It should be something that is representative of your organization and your donors, but whatever process you want to put into place, you want to document these processes for receiving and acknowledging gifts. You want to document who's responsible for this. If it's the responsibility of the treasurer, or if it's the responsibility of whoever receives the check in the mail. So that way you know whose job it is to process those gifts and make sure that they are logged and properly stewarded. So it's also good practice to document the responsibilities of updating any relevant donor records. So whatever plan you have in place for your stewardship, it should be written down. Stick to that plan so you can be sure that you are consistent with, going back, gratitude and accountability to the donor. Let's review a few methods for stewardship. Reciprocity and relationship nurturing, they fall under the genuine gratitude section of the definition that we started Reciprocity would include, say, thank you notes, thank you calls that we should be all making when we receive gifts. This would be something along the lines of, thank you so much for your support. It makes a tremendous impact on our institution. Relationship nurturing. This is where stewardship starts to mingle with cultivating donors for future gifts. It shows a genuine interest in the donor's life, and it nurtures the relationship you've developed. This is a relationship you want to develop so it can be the best it can possibly be. And this could include, say, offering a visit after they have made their gift, a stewardship visit, to tell donors what you have done with their gift and to thank them in person, and just give them updates. It could be things like making a call and reminding yourself in a note somewhere that their child was about to go off to college and asking how are they adjusting. So little things like that. Make sure that you reinforce this idea that the donor organization relationship is a positive relationship, and it's a two-way relationship. Responsibility and reporting would fall more under the accountability side of our starting definition. So it's important to note that responsibility includes fiscal responsibility, which is making good use of the funds donated to you, but also social responsibility. That you will act in the best interest of your community and society. An example of this might be that when you talk about the projects that you're taking on, you highlight that you use local businesses, or that you will hire local students for summer internships. This demonstrates social responsibility because you are making sure that your community's employers and the students in your community have work. And there's a lot of other options, but those are two that are very popular. Reporting is, it is very typical of grants. Some reports can be a very detailed narrative of a outcome, all the impacts during a grant period, but a lot of reporting falls under something along the lines of, say, an executive summary. This is just giving people an update of, here's what we did this past year thanks to your gift. Impact is essential to donors. Donors want to know that they've made a difference, and proper stewardship must address the impact of a gift. This creates a tangible connection between donors and dollars. Instead of your donor thinking, I gave this organization $500, you want to adjust that thinking process to, I funded a new program at this organization. So yes, they're both the same sentences, but one is mentioning the impact. It's not just the $500. It's that you helped fund a new program. Impact reporting is a method of showing the collective impact of donations in larger detail. Often this goes beyond the initial impact of your organization, kind of broadens the impact to the community. So it might say, we purchased educator supplies and brought in 5 classes of 4th graders to learn about the founding of our county with your $1,000 gift, or whatever the appropriate amount would be. So it shows the impact, but then it shows the way it reaches into the community. I put together a very quick impact report. It's kind of an infographic. You can see it starts with the year in review, then thank you, we greatly appreciate your support, and here little quadrants of small snippets of impact. So that because of fundraising, we have free Fridays. Because of funding, we have transcribed and digitized 300 hours of oral history. Because of funding, we've partnered with a local organization to provide flu shots to 270 families. We provided an educational program for 140 Girl Scouts because of you see how all of these things all go back to because of your funding. It's very outward facing. And it just reinforces this idea that they're partners in your organization. You are accountable to them for the work, and it goes beyond your doors to the greater community. The core of stewardship is the thank you note. When it comes to your donors, the thank you letter should be personal. It should be a personal letter. Rather than "Dear Sir, thank you very much," it should be "Dear John, thank you for your gift of $50." And if you have, it really does depend on your organization. If you want to use "Dear Dr. Smith" or "Dear John" or "Dear Jack," whatever relationship you have with this donor and whatever you feel is most comfortable, that is entirely appropriate. But stick to something as personal as possible. So in the thank you letter, you should reference the cash amount and the purpose of the gift to show that you recognize their support and what will be done with those funds. It does not have to be very detailed. It can be something along the lines of, dear John, thank you very much for your $50 donation to the annual fund. This is going to allow us to continue our great work of documenting, recording, and preserving our county's history. So if it's the annual fund, it is a very nebulous idea, but at the same time, you're still saying what you're doing with that gift, that it's going to the annual fund. A thank you note or any form of thank you should be as prompt as possible. And I'm a strong advocate for having a note in the mail within 48 hours. I do recognize that that can be difficult for some organizations, especially if you have a volunteer staff, and there can be time between going to the bank and say receiving the gift at the post office or in the mail, whatever it is. I understand that it can be a very tight turnaround. So what I suggest is, if you cannot, first I would suggest having a thank you letter template, but I would also suggest that if you cannot get a letter in the mail within 48 hours of receiving a check, then write down a note to yourself to call this person and thank them. It doesn't have to be a lengthy call. It can just be a very quick call saying, "Hey, I received the check. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it." But you want to be as quick to say thank you as possible. So if you can't get the letter out, I would really advocate calling. You really want to avoid having donors sit and wait for a thank you. So a thank you note is a great place to include a handwritten postscript. It could say anything like, it could reference a future event, like, "I look forward to seeing you and your family our upcoming harvest festival," or "It was really wonderful meeting you and your wife last month when you popped in," or whatever will personalize it more. But it's great to have a PS that will encourage donors to take a next step, like going to your website, signing up for an event, or have some form of follow-up, like asking them, "Hey, can I come over to your office and tell you what we're going to do with this gift?" So it creates levels of follow-up. It is incredibly important that whatever stewardship efforts you want to implement, make them genuine to your organization. Be considerate of what's going to be most meaningful to your donors, and share these duties with your whole organization. I believe that having board members make thank you calls is a wonderful way to engage your board and make donors feel special. Hey, it's not just it's not just one person calling me each time. I'm getting a call from a board member. That really means that they care. Or you could have volunteers either make calls or write letters, especially volunteers who may have a hard time getting out of the house at times, or they're not as active. They might be able to write notes or make thank you calls, and so it's a great way to use your whole organization. Some organizations will send out Valentine's Day cards. It is becoming a little more common, and it's a very casual, friendly note to remind donors they're appreciated. You can see here, I mocked up one very quickly. Jim and Catherine, happy Valentine's Day. Thank you so much for 3 years of support to the Pritchard County Historical Society, an organization I made up. Thank you from all of us at PCHS. Very quick, very simple. This could be sent via email, or if you have the funds and time, via mail. But it's a great way to remind donors just at any given time they're appreciated. You're thinking about them. You care. Some organizations will send birthday cards. That is entirely up to you whether you think that it's appropriate. Some donors very much love it. It is popular to send cards around October or November as a way to say, thank you so much. We look for, and a very subtle nod towards, we look forward to receiving your end of the year gift in December. Thank you videos are very popular with nonprofits, especially those who have a strong digital presence. These videos could be a bulk thank you. So a lot of universities will send out a bulk thank you video from either the president or the Alumni Association saying thank you to all of you who made donations to our annual fund. Or if you believe that it would be valuable to do individual videos. Let's say you have a project where you are starting a new exhibit and you want to show a video from the exhibit space and say thank you to everyone who supported that project. You can take a video inside there and say thank you so much, this is all because of you, show them some of the work and send it out to all of those folks. But it creates a new media dynamic for your organization. Kind of it shows something beyond just an email or a thank you note. It actually shows the video. Donor recognition is a very big part of stewardship, but it should be used carefully. The most common form of donor recognition, the one that a lot of people recognize right off the bat, is naming opportunities. For instance, the Carnegie Library System, it's just a perfect example of this. Andrew Carnegie funded libraries all over the United States. They all have his name on it because of his philanthropic support. It's just he funded it, his name goes on it. It's very common and well known. If you are thinking about putting someone's name on your building or naming a wing or a hall or a room after somebody, it is important to remember that this is potentially forever. So that's not to dissuade anybody. That is just there to say, if you are comfortable with having this person's name permanently attached to this space, then great. But it is good to remember that it is forever. So a shorter term version of this would be a donor wall. A donor wall is a very simple way for an organization to show off all of their donors for 1 year. So this could be done by, say, having a poster on the wall, maybe near the museum entrance, which breaks down all the donors by their giving level. So your biggest donors, your sponsors, those who made the biggest gifts would have their names up top saying thank you so much to our major contributors. And then if you break it down by other levels, you could do it in alphabetical order of everyone who has been a annual fund donor to your organization. So it's something that is easy to repeat and replace every year. It has a very definite timeline, and it's a fairly low cost way to say thank you. So the public recognition, this is a way of acknowledging a donor, maybe either individual or corporate. It could be in your newsletter, social media, it could be a press release. Businesses are constantly looking for marketing opportunities, so public recognition is fairly important to them. Your individual donors might appreciate having their name in your newsletter, but it is important to ask first. There are some people who are apprehensive about their information being shared by your organization. So please ask ahead of time. Something that is popular is donor profiles. So a donor profile is kind of a more robust version of the public recognition. This would involve sharing more information about a donor and their gift. It could be in the newsletter, it could be a small blurb of talking about a donor that has been a member and a volunteer, and they've been part of your organization for a decade. And so you are showing that space, you are using that space to say, we appreciate this person. This is somebody who's important to us. And not only is it good stewardship for that donor, but it's good stewardship for the donor, all of the other donors who think, well, I would like to be featured, or I see that they really care about their donors. I hope they care about me too. And you could do this as an article online. So whichever form that works for you. It could be a press release if you have, say, an event. When it does come to donor recognition, though, it's less common for organizations to give tangible gifts for a donation. So this could be the ink pens, the tote bags, mugs, umbrellas. I believe I've received all of these. I imagine a lot of people listening will have received these as well. A lot of these items often end up cluttering donor desks. And what happens is some people start to wonder, what is this organization doing with my money? And that gets to the fiscal responsibility aspect of stewardship. If you want to give out physical items, it is good practice to consider whether your donors will consider them, will view them as a gift, or whether it will make them wonder, are these wasted funds? Recognition societies are a way to recognize donors of different gift types. So what I mean by this is, let's take the leadership annual giving. This could be a recognition society that would celebrate and acknowledge your top annual donors. If you have donors who make large annual gifts, then often they don't get recognized the way that a major donor would. So having a recognition society that recognizes they are important to you and they have contributed an amount over whatever it might be for your organization. If $500 is a very large donation for your organization, then they might qualify for the leadership annual giving. But this kind of puts them in their own space and gives them separate recognition. Consecutive donors, if you're an organization that has a lot of very faithful donors, then creating a consecutive donor society that acknowledges the years of support, not the dollars, but the years. This is a great way to have a recognition society for your biggest cheerleaders. So it could have 5-year donors that would list everyone who's been giving consecutively for 5 years, and then the 10-year celebrations, the 20 years. So that would be a way to recognize people who may not have the capacity to give large amounts, but they are dedicated to you. Cumulative giving is along the same vein, but it recognizes the total giving a person has made over those years. This is very common for organizations that have long-term donors, especially those who cannot give very large amounts. So someone who has given for 25, 28 years, and yes, their gifts are like $25, $30, but over those 25, 30 years, it is amounted to $2,500, then that is something to recognize. And then the plan giving, recognition societies for plan giving are very important. Organizations often do not get a planned gift until the donor has passed away, or until the donor and their spouse have passed away in some cases. So it's good to set up a strategy to recognize and steward those donors for their gift, their future gift, while they're still alive. So if somebody has expressed to you that I intend to leave the Baldwin County Historical Society in my estate, if you have them write down their intention, then you can say you are part of the Baldwin Legacy Society, a plan giving recognition society that recognizes those donors who will put us in their estate. So just to recap, when you're thinking about your stewardship, focus on accountability and gratitude. No matter what processes you want to put in place, how detailed or not, have a plan, stick to it, and implement stewardship methods that fit your organization and your donors. You don't have to replicate what everyone else is doing. Find what works for you. And whatever way you want to recognize your donors, find an appropriate way to do so, and a consistent way, in a way that shows that, just going back to this definition, that you are being accountable for their gift and you are showing gratitude. So I want to say thank you so much for joining me for the donor stewardship presentation. This is my contact information. Please feel free to get in touch with me if you have any questions about the presentation, or if you'd like to talk through any of these items a little bit more. So thank you again for joining me for donor stewardship and taking time to learn more about fundraising.